University campuses, the latest battleground in the Hong Kong unrest. Why has the crisis escalated? And while Chinese and Japanese students have the knowledge, the president of Waseda University explains how colleges can channel this into empathy.
They have to expose themselves to the diversity.
And here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live on CGTN from Beijing. We begin today's show in Hong Kong, a city divided, paralyzed and wounded by the anti-government protests. Violence escalated to a new level in the past week, marked by the tragic death of an elderly onlooker who was hit apparently in the head as bricks were thrown around during a clash on Wednesday. Before we talk to our panelists from Hong Kong and Beijing about the ongoing crisis, let's take a look at this very chaotic week in Hong Kong.
Schools shut, roads closed, fires and bricks on the street, and an elderly resident killed amid chaos. The past week started with what Hong Kong SAR Chief Executive Carrie Lam called one of the worst days of violence since the protests began. She confirmed that one person who attempted to seize a police officer's gun was shot, and another person was set on fire by protesters, with both in critical condition. On Tuesday, as morning commutes remained paralyzed, universities became battlegrounds. As gasoline bombs, arrows, and tear gas descended across campuses, some schools urged students from the Chinese mainland to evacuate for safety. Standoffs continued into Wednesday, and the Hong Kong's Education Bureau announced all classes in the city would be suspended on Thursday. On Thursday evening, Hong Kong's Secretary for Justice, Teresa Cheng, was assaulted by protesters on the streets of London. The news of the first death directly resulting from street clashes since the protest started came on Friday. Hong Kong residents are mourning the death of a 70-year-old man who was hit in the head by a brick on Wednesday. Hong Kong police have launched a murder investigation into the death and will bring those responsible to justice.
For more on the Hong Kong unrest, we are joined in Hong Kong by Laurence Ma, Executive Council Chairman of the Hong Kong Legal Exchange Foundation. Also in Hong Kong, Edward Xie, CEO of Gaofeng Advisory. He himself is a business person. Joining us in Beijing studio, Li Huan, Associate Research Fellow at the Institute of Hong Kong and Macau Studies from the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. Also with us on the phone, we have Dr. Priscilla Mei Fong, who is an Associate Professor of the School of Law at City University of Hong Kong. She's also a Legislative Council member of the Hong Kong SAR government. May I talk to Priscilla first about her immediate takeaway in Hong Kong? Priscilla, I know the reason why you're talking to us on the phone is because you personally is under threat as a result of violence going on in Hong Kong, and your bravery in voice your opinions. Tell us more about the latest situation, Priscilla.
The latest situation in Hong Kong is very bad. I think we lack of the freedom of speech. And there are a lot of rioters who threaten everyone disagreeing with them. And I think recently, like on Monday, everyone is going to school, and university have their normal classes from the beginning. However, all these rioters, they broke into different offices and they broke into the campuses of all the universities. So the universities were compelled to cancel all the classes. And I personally experienced something, I think, very grateful and appreciative. Because, nowadays, young people in Hong Kong, especially university students, really worry us. And the behaviors at different universities have worried that whether new generation could pick up what we have done before out of the good development of the community. However, I think I do have a very treasurable class because in the past 8 weeks, when some other classes in some other university and also in my university being disturbed by different kind of people, wearing black masks.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of compel students to go out, don't take classes. My class, the classmates, the students stayed.
I see.
And on that single day, on Monday, we usually we came back very early, usually 1 hour before the class. And when the university announced that we might have to cancel classes, I sought for their view. And the students insisted that they do not want to give up the class because it took them hours to come to the classroom, and they pay, and they really love the course, and we decided to stay.
Wow.
and finish a class under the alarm and under the threat of a lot of unpredictable attack outside the classroom. It really felt like in the 1930s, like the bombs and things may be in the sky, but young people who we really treasure to go on and would do good for Hong Kong in the future, they stay. And when I said that this is a class to uphold rule of law, they are so moved. So that is one of the most valuable class and memorable class I have ever had.
I see. You're a legal expert, of course. The class that you're giving is also about the rule of law. Obviously, the students you have understand that. Having said that, though, Priscilla, answer my question directly. Do you, your family, and your friends have immediate threat right now once you are going to the streets or talk to people who have different political views? Just tell me directly, please.
Our officers, the district councillor, we are neighbors. Our office have been burned. 3 to 4 times have been bombed. And also, we do receive a lot of unwelcome calls, like in the midnight. And our officers may receive different kind of written messages, which like threaten, and if you continue to speak, it's like they make you feel very pressurized. So I truly believe I'm not the only one. And we really need to stand firm to uphold the rule of law and also to protect one country, two systems, to protect the esteem and dignity of our country. We are Chinese people, and in Hong Kong we are practicing one country, two systems, upholding the rule of law under the basic law.
Now,
so Hong Kong is not like what these people outside the road who block the road say. In fact, they are breaking the law, not other people.
Priscilla, I understand that you were very vocal, and you are still very vocal, even under the current circumstances. You spoke out during the Legislative Council meeting, asking the head of the Education Department of the SAR government as to what they have been doing so far about what's going on the campuses of universities in Hong Kong. And you speak on behalf of the students and their parents as well as, of course, as a citizen. What's the feedback so far, briefly?
Yeah, I think we pushed them to walk a little bit, and there's sort of a slight breakthrough now. I can see at least 1 to 2 university heads. They started to announce that the students should not stay in the campuses, outsiders should leave, etc. But you know, it's already far too late. When something like that happens in a campus, it must have accrued for a long period of time, and students or people who stay in the campus to do something illegal, and they accrue this illegal acts. In fact, you know, in Hong Kong common law system, the people who have the duty to manage the campus, in fact, may be held liable in law, because occupier liability means that the management of the campuses, which means the managers of the university, they should not allow any kind of criminal act to occur in the campus. If they could not handle it, they should report to the police. They should not allow anyone to mingle together and even to produce bombs or this kind of dangerous thing, conducting dangerous behaviors, manners towards other innocent people, as well as the members of the university, including staff, faculties, students, and their relatives.
I see. Well, Priscilla Mei Fong Lin, please stay with us. We're going to talk to you a bit later on the phone. Priscilla, of course, is the Legislative Council member of Hong Kong SAR. She's also a professor of law at the City University of Hong Kong. Priscilla, stay with us. For now, I want to talk to the other three guests as well. If we could have them on the same screen, that would be wonderful, wonderful. To see all of you once again, particularly those joining us. Laurence Ma at Waseda from Hong Kong. Now, Priscilla, brief us about the latest situation. I know she tried to even modest the tension through her words, but things on the ground are much more worrisome than what people see on TV screen. So, Mr. Xie, as a business person, what do you make of the latest?
Well, certainly the situation is not ideal. As you know, there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of uncertainty in the overall situation of Hong Kong. And many people are really concerned about, what's going to happen next. And therefore, the implications or the impact on businesses in general has been very negative. As you probably also know, people don't want to go out in the evenings. Therefore, a lot of restaurants, retail, have really seen their business have dropped significantly.
Right.
There's also, as you know, a reduction in people traveling to Hong Kong from outside of Hong Kong, both tourists as well as business travelers. So in many dimensions, the businesses in Hong Kong has really been severely negatively impacted by the violence so far.
It is not just businesses, not as usual anymore, Mr. Ma. It is actually human lives that we're talking about here. Now, earlier, there's already murder investigation by the Hong Kong police, a case established against an earlier case, a man being thrown with stone out of chaos and killed, a 70-year-old, a street cleaner working for the Environment Department of Hong Kong SAR government. Laurence, Mr. Ma, tell us more about that, and what does this case in fact indicate about the realities in Hong Kong, if you can?
Well, as information reveals that he is a janitor working for the government. He was a passerby who was taking his lunch or just finished his lunch, and he went out into the open and was trying to take a photo of what happened, and suddenly a brick landed on his head, and he was hit unconscious and fell onto the ground. And as a result, his brain stem was damaged, and he dies very soon after arrived in hospital. For that sort of behavior, the person, if apprehended, would be charged for murder, because murder is not just an intention to kill, but also includes any reckless indifference of anyone who throw bricks onto somebody intending to cause serious personal injury. So that the streets in Hong Kong are very dangerous. Tonight, and there's a toll road highway, which is a very major artery between Hong Kong, Kowloon, and New Territories, particularly to the Chinese University, has been blocked. And also, the rioters set fire to the a fare station in tunnels. So it's very chaotic in Hong Kong on the ground.
Now, Mr. Ma, I don't understand this. When a city is under such security threat, why things like this in a rule of law city like Hong Kong can still continue? What is going on over there? We understand also tourists, international tourists, talking about they could hardly get a taxi from airport, let's just say, to Central. And they have to take the MTR as a result of the taxis reluctant to go to the area because of the chaos. And they have to pull all their suitcases going to some of the luxurious hotels in downtown Hong Kong. And they are worried about their lives as well while they're pulling these suitcases along the road. These are international tourists. They have no political stance about where Hong Kong is going. Why would Hong Kong, as an international city, offer no service but rather chaos for everyone going to visit there or doing business there? Is it responsible, Mr. Ma?
Well, I think this is really the success of a color revolution instituted by some foreign powers in order to topple the Hong Kong government and affect the Chinese administration in the mainland China. It is somebody believed that it is actually Hong Kong is being used as a pawn in the trade war with the United States, so that America would be able to score a point in the trade war. So these Hong Kong youngsters and students have been very much so brainwashed by Hong Kong local media, particularly some local newspaper very supportive of the United States government and anti-communist regime. So these sort of day and night, year by year brainwashing have made those youngsters now becoming very anti-government and very anti-communist and anti-China. So this is actually the result that we are facing with the lack of political education and a lack of propaganda by the government.
But, you know, at this moment, this is something people have to face. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping recently has already made clear the stance of the Chinese central government on Hong Kong. He says that the most pressing task, if you look at this, is to end violence and chaos and restore order. That's the Chinese President Xi Jinping coming during his tour for the BRICS summit. On the sideline, he made those remarks. But let me go to you, Ms. Li, sitting here in Beijing. So, is there something that the central government going to do? Is there something going on between the central and the local Hong Kong SAR government? What exactly is happening? How do they see the situation? Do you see the SAR government doing enough? What tools do they still have in mind in order to, quote-unquote, restore order? Ms. Li.
Yes. This is the second time that President Xi talked about the situation in Hong Kong, and the central government declared its attitude clearly that the Hong Kong SAR government, including the chief executive and her team, the policemen, and the judicial bodies should unite to end the violence and restore order. And also the central government show their strong determination to protect the national security and national security and development interests to implement one country, two systems.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Mr. Xie? Even from a business perspective, how do you see the roles of the local SAR government, and also that the latest remark coming from Beijing, from the Chinese president?
I think what President Xi has said obviously is very appropriate. I think the priority right now is to really restore the stability of Hong Kong and really try to eradicate all the violence, which is creating a very negative impact for Hong Kong. And for the Hong Kong SAR government, they really need to really step up and really, institute very strong measures in alignment with President Xi's overall directives to really ensure that, the violence can be eradicated, as well as stability can be restored as soon as possible.
Mr. Ma, though, how?
Well, I think one of the good measures is to initiate the emergency regulation ordinance. And one of the things that the government can do is to surround the Chinese university grounds by, say, for example, 5,000 to 10,000 police, block the electricity, block the water supply, block any food supply, as well as block any mobile telephone signals. And after 5 or 7 days, the students will surrender. I think this is a good plan.
Well, I'm not sure whether that is the plan to be the perfect plan, or whether that plan should be used, but certainly there is the urgency for all parties, all factors to coming together and deal with the problem. Mr. Ma, there's another issue that I want to ask you further about. That is, how do you think there's likely to be any way that different parties right now, I mean political forces, will be able to come to certain kinds of consensus, or there's likely to be days like this, many more ahead. And where is Hong Kong heading for? Nobody knows. Mr. Ma.
Well, I don't think there will be any consensus with rioters who are instrumental in toppling the government, in destabilizing the government and trying to overthrow the government and establish a country or state on its own. Because it is impossible to talk to separatists who want to overthrow the government.
I see.
So there's no consensus can be reached with those people.
Priscilla, if you are still on the phone, may I also ask you the same question? Any possibility to some kind of consensus? Or once we talk about the fundamental principles, we're likely to have more days like this ahead? Priscilla.
We have to get consensus, no matter how difficult it is. I would describe the present radical force or separatists, but mainly actually they are irrational people who behaved without a system. They just want to destroy Hong Kong. This group of people is a minority, but it's still a lot. They do not even fall under the scope of opposition because the whole way is just to disrupt and destroy Hong Kong. I think towards these people, it's very difficult to give in anything to this most radical force. But to the large majority population, I believe we should take some political steps. We should not just leave alone the police to deal with the situation. Of course, we fully support the police, but we still need to get certain kind of consensus in different respects that we might solve some of the fundamental mutual hatred as well as the educational problems. And like the present time, I think we really need to look into the education system and those institutions like schools and universities.
I see.
Why? Because we need to really give a very clear message to these university managers that they should comply with the legal requirements and they should meet the trust of the public when we are giving them so much resources. So there are a lot of penalties, both to schools, I mean primary schools, secondary schools, as well as to universities. So they need to meet and make sure the campuses and the universities are educating people, are not spoiling people to breach the law, to hurt the society. We are not allowing campuses to stay like that. I think in very short period of time, we need to deal with that. And I heard that the government, the head of government, as well as other people are trying to convey a very clear message of public expectation to universities. They cannot avoid these messages. And we are really running out of time. I know you do have a lot of suggestions, but we're running out of this air time for the segment. But as we listen to you, Priscilla, we were playing some of the background videos of how some of the young people in Hong Kong, rather than going to school or trying to learn how to use violence among themselves to achieve what they consider as the quote-unquote the goal. Obviously, this is a city very much divided. Violence is still going on. We hope there will be an end to it soon, but we'll have to see. Thank you so much, the four of you, for joining us. Laurence Mei Fong on the phone with us, and also we have Laurence Ma, Edward Xie, and Li Huan. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, still to come on our live program. While Chinese and Japanese students have the knowledge, the president of Waseda University explains how colleges can channel this into empathy. This is very crucial as we are having so many stories of young people around the world today. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Tian Wei. Global governance
And governance within societies is indispensable because nations and our society increasingly are facing enormous challenges that are global in scale but also local when it comes to the real potential. Governance can benefit from education that hones in fresh talents and ideas. In our special series, Governance Makes a Difference, we get a chance to hear out some of the world's preeminent experts and scholars. Today, we have the president of Waseda University, Aji Tanaka. He has a new outlook on cultivating talents in modern Japan. As a country with an early economic takeoff, Japan hopes to regain its vitality. And Waseda University, as a leading institution in Japan, is grappling with the idea of global governance. It aims to help the students to find their niche in a complex environment to tackle global challenges and also, of course, difficulties and challenges at home. Take a look. President Tanaka, what a pleasure to see you in Beijing.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You have been, President Tanaka, talking about Vision 150 for your university. Mainly it's about how to be able to innovate and attract the best talents in the world. So how does that work?
Now Japan has been facing the problem to which no one really knows the answer. So we have to educate the young people to think about the problem to which no one really knows the answer. And then right now the human beings, entire human beings on the globe, facing the same problem.
Yeah.
Like religious conflict between different religions, or global warming.
Yes.
And in Japan we have the aging population and fewer and fewer fertility rate, and those things no one really knows the answer. So we have to educate the younger people to think about their own solution to the new problem.
What you have said, President Tanaka, is a very important question. The questions are even more important than the answer itself. That is how to answer questions that nobody have ever seen before.
Right.
But I really wonder, Japan is a great case study for the other economies. Because Japan, you were a developing country after the war, catching up.
Yeah.
But now already at some stage of the development.
Right.
So this is a great case study also for China, even though our population size is different. But when did you realize, academic circle, as you in university, that there is a need that Japan had to ask those questions you have never asked before? And how were those questions being shaped? By whom?
The younger people have to shape the question, form the questions, I think. They have to be exposed to the different world view, and they have to be, expose themselves to the diversity, to the different people, meet the different people with different language, different culture, different religion, and then younger people see the world better.
Yeah.
And so at Waseda University, we're emphasizing to study abroad. And hopefully every single student who grew up in Japan should go out, study abroad, to go outside of Japan, look at Japan from outside of it.
That's very important, you
Very
consider.
important. And also...
Would they have very different answers after they come back to Japan?
Yeah, right. Very different. And could be much more flexible. And I myself went to the United States after I graduated from Waseda University, and I spent 10 years studying in the United States. And after I came back, I taught 3 different universities and then came back to Waseda University. I have been exposed myself to different views and so forth. And many Japanese trained in that way. Grew up in Japan, educated in Japan, the view is very narrow. And now, at our university, we're emphasizing to accept more international students to study at Waseda.
In Japan, you have a very comfortable life. I mean the students, young people, because it's a developed economy. How would you encourage them to be more worldly in a way?
Some of the younger people who come back after study abroad, for like a junior year or senior year student, they have experienced the study abroad. They can talk to the younger people, and they can, they receive the, strong stimuli, different incentives, and then they can talk to the younger students that, I had a great experience, and why don't you do that to the younger people?
So this is a kind of peer, in a way, influence.
Peer influence, right.
So what you're advocating, Professor and President, is very different from the traditional culture.
Yes, that's true.
Was it difficult to push that?
Right, but still, I think there's a way to, keeping the, East Asian type of manner, East Asian manner, but showing their ideas, showing their passions through the very cordial conversation.
China and Japan, it is true that we've been going through some roller coasting experiences.
Yeah.
So how much do you think it takes educators like you and your counterparts in China to be able to make the interactions sustainable?
Just about a month ago, we had 3 countries, China, Korea, and Japan, and 3 countries triangle meeting.
Yes.
And each country's Minister of Education, Department of Education, Minister of Education, sponsors that. But although the university president got together and exchanged their ideas, and then we kind of all agreed that, Japan and Korea, and China and Japan, and those, and we have in our past we had a very difficult time and hard time.
Yes.
And then right now Korea and Japan are having a very hard time. However, no matter how difficult the politics or international relations wise, we can communicate as an educator, and actually not despite of the hard time, but because we are having hard time, we have to communicate better. And then actually those 3 countries educators kind of agreed that we have to keep making our effort to communicate and try to understand each other.
Of course, next year it could be a great year for Japan and China. I mean, it seems that some kind of foundation has been paved to build up to a leaders meeting sometime early next year.
Right.
But to you as an educator, what advice would you give to the leaders of the 2 countries in terms of how to better promote educational exchanges, the youth programs?
Of course, each leader has a responsibility to protect that their own country, and also urge the development of each country.
Yes.
But despite of that role of the leaders, they should try to listen to each other, try to generate antagonism each other, and just leaders try to communicate each other and try to find the best way, and then media and those leaders try to send the message to the people that those leaders are making an effort to understand each other, and so people should try to understand each other.
What about university among yourselves, cooperation? I mean, you are here on an occasion to work with Tsinghua University. I know your university also works with other Chinese universities on a very sustainable basis. So how much do you think university and educational exchanges will be able to bring some kind of momentum?
So let me take the Waseda example. Waseda University was founded in 1882, but 1905, and early 20th century, and Waseda created the Department of Chinese Studies students, and we accepted many Asian students, many Chinese students, and some Korean students. And 1905 until 1915 or so, until before the very international relations of Japan became very difficult, we have taught accumulation of the 3,000 Asian students. Most of them are Chinese students. And then that has a very good impact for the long run.
Another, Professor Tanaka, is about innovation. Japan is an innovation hub, starting from the 1970s. And China now is also becoming more innovative, particularly in the application of technologies. Now, how do you see, from an educator and researcher's perspective, the two economies be able to play their own distinctive role in terms of innovation?
I think we are entering the new phase. Chinese innovation is very rapid and very innovative now. And then many Japanese corporations are very interested in Chinese innovations.
They're having their innovation hub even in China.
Right, right. So Japanese should not be just imitating what China does. We should learn from China, but just imitation will not go very well. So we should learn from China, but think about our own way.
The other thing is about, interesting to many of the Chinese these days, is about how Japan survived and thrived from the 1970s and 80s, when Japan and the United States were at some kinds of a trade war. You experienced that period of time as a young man. So tell me more about how you remembered universities, young people, educators, innovation, all of these elements work during a time when Japan was also struggling with one of your most difficult bilateral relations.
Japan was a copycat, emulating what the U.S. does, and then Japan, providing the better product with a cheaper price. What we are doing is just, valid thing, and nothing wrong with that. And those countries, both are the different projects, but probably the solution would be again the communication. And if some of the Japanese leaders were educated part of their lives in the United States, they could understand better. And some of the American leaders were, spend some part of their lives in Japan, they could understand better.
But that were not the case.
That was not the case then. So that gives us a lesson that younger people should spend some time in other countries.
So you think strategic rivalry, as being termed by some politicians, can be resolved by how educational institutions work?
Right.
Really?
Right.
Is that too naive a thought? Some would say?
For educators, that's the only way to do. It takes a long time. And so we cannot solve tomorrow's issue. We have to pave the way for taking time. And then, so like Schwarzman College is one of those things. Like many Americans are studying in China and understanding China. And when they go back to the United States, they will be the different type of new leaders. And then same thing for Japan. We are sending many students to China, and we are receiving many students from China. And then they understand each other. And we can solve tomorrow's problem. But in 20 years from now, they will be understanding better. So they may come up with a new solution, different type of solution than our generation.
I see you look at long-term, President Tanaka, but at the same time, short-term also very important.
Very important.
If you see the rise of unilateralism in the world, you also see protectionism. Japan, once again, is a trading nation. You might not necessarily prefer protectionism in economies. You also see the young people uncertain about their future, and therefore take a very different way of expressing themselves.
I'm just opposing to the, urging the antagonism. It's called populism, for the sake of the political leaders' popularity among the people. Is saying something very sharp towards the, trade partner or the opponent, and rather than that, I'm trying to teach to my students that, right now, think about, don't be influenced by the very radical media. Don't be think about very radical, like a political leaders or demagogues, but think clear, objectively, and then think, use your own brain and think through.
I noticed through our conversation, you use one verb all the time. Think. What kind of thinking do you think all of us at this moment, no matter where we come from or what age group, we really need to think collectively?
We have to be depending on the knowledge too much. I mean, East Asian countries who emphasize the knowledge in our education, China and Korea and Japan, and all the students are trained very well and with knowledge based, and also logic too. But we have to think uniquely, and each one of us, and each one of the Chinese, each one of the Korean, each one of the Japanese, have to get used to the think her or his own unique solution, and so that's why I'm saying think. So collectively, we have to try to understand each other.
Yeah.
And mutual understanding. That collectively, we all think.
I see.
Yeah.
Listen to your own voices, inner voices.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, work together to think on some of the bigger issues.
Right.
President Tanaka, what a pleasure to see you in Beijing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Eiji Tanaka, president of Waseda University from Japan. The key word, think. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Have a great weekend.